You believe you are in control of your life. You think your choices are guided by reason, logic, conscious will. But what if I told you that much of what you do, what you want, even what you fear, is not chosen by you at all? What if the forces shaping your relationships, your habits, your ambitions, and your failures live in a hidden part of your mind you cannot see? Freud called this the unconscious, and he claimed that until you confront it, you are not truly free. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself repeating the same mistake in different forms, choosing the same type of partner, even though you swore you never would, falling into the same arguments, the same disappointments, the same cycles of emptiness? You tell yourself, this time will be different, but in the end, it isn't. Why? Because hidden desires, buried impulses, and repressed emotions are pulling strings behind the curtain of your awareness. Freud believed that we are driven not by the stories we tell ourselves, but by forces we deny. The polite mask you wear in public, the careful self-image you maintain, the morality you project. These are thin layers over deeper currents. Beneath lies the id, a reservoir of instinctual drives, primal desires, raw impulses. Hunger, lust, aggression, fear, the parts of yourself you've been told to hide, the urges you've learned to suppress, the longings you dare not speak aloud. And here is the disturbing truth. These drives do not disappear just because you repress them. They go underground. They disguise themselves. They shape your behavior in hidden ways, leaking through slips of the tongue, irrational fears, sudden outbursts, secret fantasies. They appear in your dreams. They erupt in your relationships. They sabotage your goals. Freud once wrote that people are not masters in their own houses, and that is the problem. You think you are the architect of your destiny, but in reality, your unconscious is the one drafting the plans. You felt this already, that sudden moment when you said something you didn't mean, that flash of jealousy you tried to deny, that irrational fear you can't explain, that attraction that defies logic. These are not accidents. These are the unconscious breaking through, and the cost of ignoring this is enormous. Repressed desires don't vanish. They rot, they twist, they turn into symptoms, anxiety, depression, compulsions, addictions. They destroy relationships from the shadows. They drain energy as you fight battles you don't even understand. You've been trained to fear your desires. From childhood, you were told some feelings were unacceptable. Anger was punished. Desire was shamed. Sadness was silenced. And little by little, you learned to bury them. You learned to present only the parts of yourself that won approval. The rest went underground, but what is buried alive does not die. It grows stronger. It rules silently. And this is why you feel torn, restless, empty, because the self you show to the world is only a fraction of who you are. Freud revealed a shocking truth. The unconscious is not just a storage place for forgotten memories. It is a living force, constantly shaping your choices. And unless you confront it, you are being ruled by it. Look closely at your life. The relationships that keep repeating, the failures that feel inevitable, the strange dreams you can't explain, the patterns you notice but can't escape. These are not coincidences. They are messages. They are your unconscious speaking in symbols. You have felt it. That sense that something else is steering your life, some hidden script you didn't write but keep performing. You call it bad luck, destiny, or coincidence, but Freud would call it unconscious desire. And here is the paradox. These desires are not only dangerous, they are also the key to your freedom. Because once you see them, once you admit them, once you integrate them, they lose their destructive power. They become energy you can channel consciously. But most people will never do this. They prefer illusions. They prefer masks. They prefer to believe they are in control, even as their lives are ruled by what they deny. They repress. They distract, they numb themselves, and they suffer quietly until the end. You are here because some part of you refuses that. Some part of you is ready to stop being a puppet of your hidden desires. Some part of you wants to see what lies beneath. But be warned, this is not comfortable. To face your unconscious is to face everything you've buried. The forbidden thoughts, the shameful impulses, the truths you swore you'd never admit. It feels like collapse. It feels like chaos. But it is the only way to become free. Freud taught that repression is never a solution, it is a trap, and the only escape is awareness. So now the question is this: will you dare to look beneath the surface? Will you dare to confront the desires that control you in silence? Because in the next part, we will dive deeper into Freud's roadmap, the battle between the IDE, ego, and superego. We will see how repression works, why it creates symptoms, and how awareness begins to break the cycle. And once you see this, you will never see yourself or your life the same way again. You have already felt the pull of the unconscious, the sudden urges, the irrational fears, the dreams that disturb and confuse you. But Freud went further. He gave us a map of the mind itself, a way to understand why we feel so divided, why we live torn between desire, morality, and reality. He described three forces: the id, the ego, and the superego. Together, they form the stage where your life plays out. The id is the oldest, deepest part of you. It is instinct, pure drive, raw appetite. It seeks only pleasure and avoids only pain. It doesn't care for morality, logic, or consequence. It is the voice of hunger, lust, rage, and longing. It whispers, "I want, I need, now." You've heard it. The craving that pulls at you. The anger that erupts suddenly. The desire that grows stronger the more you try to deny it. The id is not evil, but it is primitive. Left unchecked, it can consume you. Then there is the superego. This is the moral voice, the internalized parent, the judge. It is formed by the rules, beliefs, and expectations you absorb from family, culture, and society. It tells you what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is forbidden. It whispers, you must not. If you do this, you are bad. If you resist, you are good. You know this voice too. The guilt that rises when you step outside expectations, the shame that burns when you admit what you desire, the pressure to be perfect, to be good, to be acceptable. The superego demands obedience, even at the cost of your happiness. And caught between these two forces is the ego. The ego is the negotiator, the mediator, the one trying to balance primal desire with moral law. It is the conscious self that tries to survive in reality. It asks, how can I get what I want without destroying myself? How can I meet my desires without violating the rules? How can I live without falling apart? This inner battle is exhausting. Every day you are torn between the hunger of the id and the judgment of the superego. The ego struggles endlessly to keep peace, to find compromise, to maintain order, but often the cost of this struggle is repression. Repression is the mechanism by which desires are pushed down into the unconscious. The ego cannot let the id run wild, and it cannot let the superego crush you entirely, so it buries what doesn't fit. Desires too dangerous to express, impulses too shameful to admit, longings too forbidden to pursue, all are sent into the darkness. But here is the problem. What is repressed does not vanish. It leaks. It returns. It finds disguise. Freud showed us that the unconscious reveals itself in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in irrational behavior, in symptoms of anxiety and depression. You think you are choosing freely, but often you are acting out a repressed script. The unconscious finds ways to express itself, even when you deny it. Think of the times you said something by accident, shocking yourself with your own words. Think of the dreams that show you strange images, half terrifying, half familiar. Think of the patterns you repeat, the conflicts you recreate, the attractions that defy logic. These are the unconscious breaking through repression, and this is why you feel divided. Because part of you wants one thing, another part forbids it, and a third part struggles to hold the tension. The result is conflict, guilt, anxiety, self-sabotage. You punish yourself for desires you didn't choose, while the unconscious keeps pulling strings in the dark. Freud believed this was the human condition. We are not unified beings, but battlegrounds of desire and repression. But he also believed that awareness can liberate. When you bring the unconscious into consciousness, when you stop repressing and start acknowledging, the conflict loses its destructive power. Yet awareness is rare. Most people cannot bear to face what they've buried. They fear their own ID, and they fear the judgment of their superego. So they live trapped, repeating cycles, ruled by desires they pretend do not exist. Look at your own life. Where do you feel torn? Where do you act against your own interest? Where do you find yourself repeating the same mistakes, driven by forces you don't understand? These are clues. These are the fingerprints of repression. But here lies the paradox. The unconscious is not only the source of conflict, it is also the source of creativity, vitality, and freedom. The same drives you repress are the drives that give you energy, passion, vision. By burying them, you bury yourself. And so the question arises, will you dare to look? Will you dare to face the id without being consumed by it? Will you dare to confront the superego without collapsing into guilt? Will you dare to strengthen the ego, not as a mask, but as a conscious bridge between desire and morality? This is the work Freud offered. Not to eliminate desire, not to erase morality, but to make the unconscious conscious. In the next part, we will see how hidden desires shape the very fabric of your relationships, your ambitions, your fears. We will reveal why you are drawn to the partners you are, why you sabotage success, why you feel trapped, and how it all connects back to the unconscious drives you deny. And once you see this, you will begin to recognize the secret architecture of your life. Look closely at your life. Look at your relationships, your ambitions, your fears. Do you really believe they are all the result of conscious choice? Freud would say no. He would argue that what appears as free will is often the unconscious replaying hidden desires, unresolved conflicts, and repressed longings. Let's begin with relationships. Have you noticed how people often repeat the same patterns with different partners? The faces change, the names change, but the story feels strangely familiar. The same disappointments, the same fights, the same painful endings. This is not coincidence. This is repetition compulsion. Freud's idea that we unconsciously recreate situations that mirror unresolved conflicts from childhood. You may find yourself drawn to someone who treats you in a way that echoes your earliest experiences of love, even if those experiences were painful. You say, "I'll never end up with someone like that again." And yet you do. Why? Because your unconscious is trying to resolve unfinished business. It pushes you toward familiar wounds, hoping for a different outcome, but usually creating the same result. This is why so many relationships feel hauntingly similar. You are not choosing freely, you are reenacting, and until you see the hidden desire beneath, the longing for approval, the hunger for validation, the fear of abandonment, you will remain trapped in the cycle. It goes deeper. The qualities you find most irresistible in others often reflect parts of yourself you have repressed. If you are overly controlled, you may be drawn to someone wild and spontaneous. If you repress your anger, you may be magnetized by someone who expresses theirs freely. Freud would say this attraction is not random. It is the unconscious seeking balance, trying to reclaim lost parts of you through another. And just as attraction reveals the unconscious, so does conflict. The arguments that cut deepest, the triggers that feel irrational, the jealousies that consume you, they often point not to the other person, but to your own hidden desires. You accuse them of being selfish, but perhaps you repress your own selfishness. You accuse them of being unfaithful, but perhaps you bury your own forbidden impulses. Projection, Freud warned, is the favorite trick of the unconscious. What you cannot admit in yourself, you see in others. Now look at ambition. Freud believed that much of human achievement is sublimation, the redirection of primal drives into socially acceptable outlets. The hunger for power, the drive for recognition, the passion for creation, these often emerge from repressed desires, transformed into higher forms. The artist channels forbidden fantasies into beauty. The entrepreneur channels aggression into competition. The leader channels desire for control into influence. On the surface, it looks noble, but beneath, it is the same energy that could destroy if left unchanneled. Freud did not condemn this. In fact, he saw sublimation as one of humanity's greatest strengths, proof that hidden desires can be transformed rather than denied. But he also warned that ambition becomes destructive when we lose sight of its roots. If you chase success without recognizing the desire behind it, you may achieve everything and still feel empty. This explains why some of the most accomplished people are also the most restless. They believed achievement would satisfy the unconscious, but desire is never satisfied through denial. You cannot feed the unconscious with trophies. You must acknowledge the hunger beneath them. Fear is also shaped by repression. Phobias, Freud argued, are often symbolic. The object of fear is rarely the true source. The fear of heights may mask a fear of losing control. The fear of spiders may symbolize deeper anxieties about invasion or contamination. The fear of intimacy may mask a fear of rejection, rooted in childhood wounds. The unconscious displaces unbearable fears onto safer targets, creating phobias that seem irrational but are in fact symbolic disguises. Even anxiety itself, Freud believed, is the signal of repressed desire. It is the ego trembling under pressure, struggling to keep forbidden impulses buried. The racing thoughts, the restless energy, the feeling of doom, these are the echoes of the id knocking at the door. And then there is power. Freud saw human life as a constant struggle between desire and repression, pleasure and law. This struggle plays out not only within individuals, but in society itself. Institutions, religions, governments, all are built on the regulation of desire. Civilization depends on repression, but the more desire is suppressed, the more it erupts in hidden ways. Think of scandals among the powerful. Think of how often leaders fall because of desires they could not control. The unconscious does not care for titles or status. It will break through wherever it is denied. And this is why Freud was so controversial. He suggested that beneath the polished surface of culture lies a seething mass of hidden desire. You see this in yourself too. The mask you wear in public, the roles you perform at work, the careful image you maintain, beneath all of it, desires whisper. You keep them hidden, thinking they are dangerous. But by denying them, you give them more power. This is the tragedy Freud wanted us to face. We believe repression protects us, but it enslaves us. We spend our lives building walls against ourselves, and in doing so, we lose touch with vitality, creativity, passion. We become hollow. But there is another way. The unconscious is not only a source of conflict, it is also a source of transformation. By confronting hidden desires, by admitting what we deny, we reclaim energy. We stop repeating patterns. We stop projecting. We stop being puppets of repression. Yet this path is frightening. To admit your hidden desires is to risk judgment, to risk rejection, to risk the collapse of the image you've built. It feels like death, but it is not death. It is the beginning of freedom. And so the question comes back to you. Will you keep living the same cycles, ruled by hidden desires you pretend don't exist? Or will you dare to face them, to integrate them, to transform them into strength? In the next part, we will see how this transformation unfolds in practice. We will explore how awareness of hidden desires can lead to authenticity, wholeness, and freedom. And we will uncover the daily practices, journaling, reflection, silence, that turn insight into reality. Because the unconscious will not wait forever. It will keep knocking until you answer. Awareness is not enough. Knowing that hidden desires shape your life is only the first step. Transformation comes from living differently. Freud's great insight was not simply that repression exists, but that by bringing the unconscious into awareness, you reclaim power over your own destiny. But how do you do it? How do you turn theory into life? How do you stop being ruled by what you deny? It begins with honesty, brutal, uncomfortable honesty. Look at yourself without filters. Write down the thoughts you never speak. Admit the desires you fear. Confess the impulses you have buried. This is not about acting on them. It is about acknowledging them. Because the moment you admit the unconscious, it loses its grip. Journaling is a powerful tool here, not the kind of journaling where you record events, but the kind where you confront truth. Each night, write what you felt but didn't say. Write the jealousy, the anger, the longing. These pages are not for anyone else. They are for you to face the shadow you keep hidden. Dreams are another doorway. Freud called them the royal road to the unconscious. Pay attention to them. They speak in symbols, the stranger chasing you, the house you keep returning to, the forbidden desire that appears at night. These are not random. They are messages from the unconscious. Record them, study them, ask yourself, what is this dream trying to show me about what I repress? Silence is essential. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of listening. Each day, sit without distraction. No phone, no music, no mask. Let the discomfort rise. Let the thoughts swirl. At first, it feels unbearable. That is because the unconscious finally has room to speak. Listen. Notice what surfaces. The very impulses you've been running from are the ones you must face. Boundaries are another practice. Hidden desires often show themselves in the ways we collapse into others, saying yes when we want no, giving when we are empty, playing roles for approval. Each boundary you set is an act of honesty. Each no you speak is a declaration of selfhood. And with every boundary, you reclaim energy that repression has stolen. Therapy, too, is a path Freud pioneered. To speak your hidden desires aloud, to have them witnessed without judgment, is profoundly liberating. Analysis is not about being fixed. It is about being seen. It is about giving voice to the unconscious so it no longer rules in silence. And beyond these practices lies a deeper transformation: acceptance. Freud shocked the world by suggesting that we are not purely rational, moral beings. We are also driven by desire, by aggression, by impulses we fear. But these impulses do not make you broken, they make you human. To accept them is not to indulge them blindly, but to recognize them as part of your wholeness. This is where freedom is born. When you accept your hidden desires, they stop sabotaging you. The anger you denied becomes boundary. The envy you buried becomes ambition. The desire you feared becomes creativity. What once enslaved you becomes fuel. And this transformation changes everything. In relationships, you stop repeating cycles. You stop chasing partners who mirror old wounds. You stop projecting your shadow onto others. Instead, you enter connections with clarity, honesty, and freedom. In ambition, you stop chasing achievements blindly. You recognize the hidden desires beneath your drive, the hunger for validation, the fear of insignificance, and instead of being ruled by them, you integrate them. Your work becomes authentic expression, not desperate performance. In fear, you stop being haunted by phantoms. You see through the disguise of phobias. You recognize anxiety for what it is, the ego trembling under repressed desire. And by naming the desire, you dissolve the anxiety, and in power, you stop being a puppet of repression. You see through the illusions of control. You recognize that civilization may demand masks, but you never forget the face beneath them. You can play the role society requires without being swallowed by them. This is the gift of Freud's work, liberation through awareness. Not liberation from desire, but liberation through it. But make no mistake, this path is not comfortable. People will not always understand you. Some will say you have changed. Some will call you selfish, arrogant, even dangerous. What they really mean is that you have stopped performing the role they depended on. They're reacting to their own unconscious, not yours. At the same time, you will inspire. Those who are ready will be drawn to you. Your authenticity will awaken theirs. Your freedom will challenge them to face themselves. You will become a mirror, unsettling to some, magnetic to others. And within yourself, you will feel something rare, a calm strength, a steady presence, a freedom from the exhausting war of repression. This is the transformation Freud hinted at but left for you to live. Because theory is only the beginning. Life begins when you dare to face yourself. So now I ask you, will you do it? Will you keep pretending? Or will you face the desires that have ruled you from the shadows? Will you keep living cycles of repetition? Or will you reclaim your life from the unconscious? Because if you do, everything changes. You stop being fragile. You stop being replaceable. You stop being unconscious. You become whole. You become free. If you are ready, declare it now. Write in the comments, I choose awareness. And if you want to keep walking this path, subscribe, because this is not the end. This is only the beginning.